Bam! MC is in the house. What's up, folks? My name is Justin Garcia, also known as Master Chim, and welcome to the Warrior Stream. I'm here every Wednesday at noon Eastern Standard Time, taking a topic, deep diving, having a good time while doing it. For those of you that are not getting my email every morning, my email newsletter is the MC Letter, the Master Chim Letter. You can go to masterchimletter.com, whether you're watching on YouTube or one of the Facebook pages that I'm streaming this to live right now. The link is definitely going to be in the description. Got a pretty good topic planned for today. I just done a piece of writing, and one of the things that I like to do when I'm designing the models that I follow is I like to take those models and apply them to different hypotheticals and sort of pressure test them against my own experiences, against experiences that I get by way of feedback. But now, with the advent of LLMs, the AI platforms, I could plug these models in and basically argue with ChatGPT for a few hours, trying to really polish these models in the face of criticism or, exposed contradictions. That being said, one of the perennial archetypes that kept popping up in this sort of devil's advocate paradigm that I'm following with the LLMs is this notion of what I would define as being a passive man. And passive men are men who are basically, they get into the car and they automatically get in the passenger seat, or even worse, the back seat of the car before anybody else had entered. They're the guys that are looking to sort of opt out of the challenging circumstances that wind up forging men into men of value, not only for themselves, but primarily, for themselves, but beyond that to the people around them. So we have a different take on it. I usually do. My systems usually do, and I wanted to flesh that out today. So let's see who's on the stream. My man Jesse, what's going on, brother man? Good to see you. Aaron, yo to you too. Are you trying to speak New York to me, Canadian? Good to see you. Jamie, what's up, brother man? Good to see you. Jesse says your video is vertical today. So apparently the service that I use, StreamYard, had just added a aspect ratio specific feed for the streams. So if you're watching this on a screen that is set to a horizontal viewing experience, you'll get the horizontal video. But if you're watching on a vertical feed, you will get a vertical feed. So for some of you guys that have been watching, my stuff for a while, it might actually populate the entire screen today for the first time, which is new, which is pretty cool, I think. And right now, I'll be honest, I have to stay focused because the interface that I have, I wish I could just show you guys what I'm looking at. It's showing my horizontal feed, my vertical feed, and then my camera feed. So there's three of me, and it's we're in this fucking dance battle right now. I'm trying to ignore the fact that there is three of me. There are three of me just getting crazy in front of me. But we'll figure it out. Pressure to power. That's the thing, right? Aaron says the baby is waving at you again. Tell her I said hello. Elfwin, hello. John Wiley, what's up, brother man? Good to see you. John, you better get your ass back on the Mastermind page. I haven't seen you there in a bit. I'm watching you, motherfucker. All right. Yarn Saxa, what's up, Tom? Good to see you. All right, so let's get it popping here. What do we got going on? Aaron says her reaction, I was glad isn't good. I'm glad. All right, so me and my list. I sat down, I had this passive men thing archetype that keeps popping up, and it's all right, obviously we all know what this could mean, We all know people that if you had to ask, do you know any men that you consider to be passive men? It's like we'd have our idea of what that's supposed to be. But true to form, I like codifying things. I like just giving myself a value, in the form of a definition for these different archetypes that allow me to sort of plug and chug their, usefulness or lack of usefulness in different models. And so I'm addicted to lists as well. You guys know that. So I decided to go with a list today. And I have written on the side of me here the 7 patterns of passive men. Introduced to this whole vertical and horizontal thing today with my streaming service, the StreamYard I use. I did not have the time to put these onto the screen. So I'm just going to read them and we're going to go from there. So hopefully you guys can follow. So starting off with these 7 patterns. Now, let me just introduce the context or the paradigm that I'm taking. Being a passive man is not a good thing, right? So we're operating under that premise. Being a passive man is not something that's going to get you what I think a man should be pursuing, right? So these patterns, right? So 7, there's 7 of them, patterns. Patterns are the things that we could see repetitively being formed to the point where they imply that this is a habit that an individual has, right? So the patterns of what we consider to be passive men, men who let other people and other circumstances determine the trajectory of their efforts and in turn their lives. So we have these 7 patterns, right? So passive man, not a good thing, right? So hopefully I added all the disclaimers and context that I needed to getting into this. Johnny Groove, what's up, brother man? All right. So number 1, the number 1 pattern. They confuse showing up with stepping up. Now, passive men tend to appear for the conversations. They appear sometimes for the celebrations. They appear for all of the benefits, right? In Tribalnomics, I talk about one of the reasons that, somebody enters into a tribe is they have access to in-tribe benefits. And passive men absolutely have a relationship with that access to those benefits. But the thing about a passive man that we'll notice by pattern is that they want the recognition, but don't always want the responsibility. They don't want to do the work. They don't want to be accountable. They'll be there if a group is accomplishing something because they'll want to be associated with that accomplishment and want the same benefits and accolades that might, be deserved of the group. But when you're a passive man, you're somebody who tends to let somebody else take charge, somebody else do the work. They're the people that opt out typically, right? And so the number 1 pattern is they confuse showing up with stepping up. Number 2, and this is one that I had to articulate a little bit in more detail in a recent mastermind call because we were discussing this. And number 2 is they chase comfort and call it discipline. They repeat the same easy routines that are typical, that are comfortable for them. And they pretend that they've sort of installed them. They're investing in things that already feel good to them, that already feel natural. But ironically, they avoid those things that challenge them. So what are a couple of examples, right? The easy analogy I use to illustrate this point usually is like asking somebody who is already good at something how to get good at it. Oftentimes, most times I would argue, is like asking Shaq how to be tall. They're doing something that they didn't have a conscious investment or a conscious hand, in developing. It's the guy who, like, I could show you pictures of me when I competed in MMA professionally, when I competed in bodybuilding, which makes this example even worse, where I had no defined midsection. Right? I had like these just barely visible abdominal muscles because I'm built like somebody that's supposed to run through walls, right? I'm not built like some Greek statue, right? That's just not how I've ever been built. So even when I'm really lean, I don't have these pronounced shredded midsections. Despite me working out like a maniac, dieting like a maniac, studying, getting more information so I could train a little bit more effectively and a little bit more from a sophisticated, educated perspective. I'm doing all that. I still don't have the abs. Yet I'll take you to the hood right now, and there will be some crackhead doing pull-ups on a fucking traffic light that has 25 abdominal muscles protruding out of his midsection, eating, Cheetos and drinking beer all day long. Passive men want credit for the things that are easy. It's sort of like, well, if I showed up, it's almost like what do they call it? Like when you go to college and you try to transfer that, I guess it's experience credits, these life credits. It's like I haven't taken any courses in another college to transfer these credits from there, but I have all this experience. So can you give me credits for that? And that's what passive men tend to do here. They want to pretend that they're doing something disciplined because most people might not have an easy time doing what they're doing. But when you look behind the curtain, they've always done that. They've never not done that. It's the guy who's in fantastic shape, who's always been in fantastic shape. I've always been disproportionately strong, right? So I've always been on the higher end of the strength curve. A lot of that, I have no understanding of how I became where I was, where that was concerned. So it would be disingenuous for me to say that I can tell you how I went from being weak to being strong, because I don't necessarily, and I'm just speaking about lifting weights here, because I don't necessarily identify a time in my life where I was ever really weak by that criteria. So passive men, you remember, these are the patterns of passive men that you'll observe. They tend to want credit for things that they already do that they have learned to call discipline. Look at all these things that I do because of my discipline, because they understand the value that they get, the benefit they get from saying that they're disciplined in any way. But again, upon further review and inspection, they're not necessarily disciplined in a way that they installed it. This is just something they've always done, right? So, next, this is number 3. So, number 1, they confuse showing up with stepping up. Number 2, they chase comfort and call it discipline. Number 3, the number 3 pattern of passive men, they copy the signals of strength. They imitate the language, the mannerisms, the gestures, the routines even, and pretend that what they're doing is a part of who they are. They mimic the impression of strong men, right? Or the facade of a strong man. But when you actually look at what the benefit of being strong gives a man, they don't have that part, right? So if you're somebody who's been through some shit, you learn some shit, and you got a whole bunch of strength because you've adapted to enduring that shit, right? Well, these people, these passive men who have the pattern of mimicking strength, mimicking hardcore experience, when you actually, again, you look behind the curtain, you realize they're actually not who they say they are where this is concerned. You'll see this was a phenomenon I think everybody will understand. When you get the hardcore, like, gangster rapper who you do some research, or it is, revealed that he's had some privileged, upbringing. He went to like private schools his whole lives. But when you look at his rap music and the facade that he has, he's pretending that he's some gangster, crazy killer motherfucker. And it's that copying of the signal of strength that they recognize is going to give them access to power. So what you're noticing now with these patterns of these passive men is they're finding ways to access the benefits without having to adorn the identity of a strong man, right? So this is yet another example of that, right? So number 4, they consume more than they create. They take time, energy, resources away from other people. And they do it because they're part of the connection, they're part of the alliance. But when you actually look to see if that's ever reciprocated, it isn't. One of the big reasons that the country has so much debt, and debt is such a problem, is credit card companies, financial institutions. They find it a successful formula to offer young adults, people who are legally allowed to have credit cards, but don't have the life experience to understand how they should use them, to just inundate these people with offers of credit. And before you know it, somebody who's 18 who works part-time at a fucking Best Buy has $40,000 of credit card debt because there was a spell where they kept getting these cards. There's a point where if we don't allow people or we don't force people to reciprocate the benefits they're getting a little bit more in lockstep, in terms of the timelines. You do one, I do one. You do one, I do one. Passive men will run that formula as long as they can. They will take as much as they can if nobody is going to force them to reciprocate while they're doing it. Right? So a pattern of passive men, again, is to get more than they give. How many times have we heard the welfare queens trying to guilt society into giving her more money for her children? Yet she keeps having children and she keeps wasting resources, and she's not shown herself to be somebody looking to create an income or create any inherent value on her own. It's like, yeah, they'll keep doing this, right? And with passive men, you'll see that same thing. If you're somebody of any financial means, and every time you go out with your buddies, you're the one that foots the bill because maybe they're not doing as well financially, ask them one time to pay the bill at the end of the meal. See what happens. Me personally, my financial ability now aside, there was a time where I didn't have the means, and I still had, allies of influence, of means, of financial means. If I was ever invited to go somewhere that I knew I couldn't afford myself, I would look at them right in the eye and say, listen, I'm not going there because I don't have the money to go there. To which a lot of them, typically, no, don't worry about it. I got it. It's on me. And it's like, no, man, I'm good. I don't need you buying me fucking meals. I don't need you. And it's a matter of pride, a point of pride. But really, I'm just not going to act like somebody who's being wined and dined by my friend. It's fucking gay, right? Aside from being weak, right? But you have this mindset that some people have where, you'll see the entourages with a newly wealthy athlete or an actor or performer of some sort, where all of a sudden they've got more money than they know what to do with, and they have these hangers on, right? These fucking barnacles that just stick to them and sit there and try to get as much as they can. And as soon as that person falls on rough times, these people just drift, right? And they find something else, some other source of power and energy. With passive men, because they're finding ways to survive, like a scavenger survives, like a parasite survives, there is no humility. There's no shame. They will absolutely anchor themselves to somebody who's willing to keep giving them the thing. Which then begs the question to the people who do have a surplus, to the people who do have some means where they could share, what are you doing to your allies if you're paying for everything? If you're doing everything for them and you never ask for anything in return? You're basically training them into this role. Not that you're training them against their will, but you also play a role in their transformation from somewhat mutualistic ally into parasitic, scavenger, and remember, when it comes to the blame game, a lot of people think that only like there's one potato, right? And it's the hot potato game. Who gets the blame for this bad circumstance? In life, there's enough potatoes to go around. Everybody's got a little bit of a role that they played in it. If you want to call that role blame, so be it, right? But when you have somebody who is passive, they're always going to look to get more than they have access to because they understand that they're not going to be able to, they're looking to get more than they can contribute, I should say, because they know that they've never been capable to contribute much. And so the limitation that they see to acquire more is not in their ability to be able to create more, it's in their ability to manipulate others to give them more, right? And that's what you'll see with passive men. So that was number 4. Number 5, right? And this is a pretty, I think, common one. They avoid confrontation and call it unity. How many people do you guys know? I know an endless number of people, it would seem, that are conflict averse. And because their aversion to conflict is something they either don't acknowledge or maybe don't even realize, they have this general consensus of, can't we all get along? Shouldn't we all? And it's like, well, isn't that convenient? Isn't it convenient? The person who has no choice but to get along with people is espousing this philosophy of peace and empathy and compassion. And this is what passive men will do. They are not about confrontation. They're passive. They're submissive in certain circumstances. They're not somebody, by definition, who's going to step up and fight, who's going to stand their ground. So what do? They say that we need to get along. We need to get together. You'll see this with the socialist Marxist types. They've never fucking created anything, but suddenly they have an opinion about what those who have created stuff should do with that stuff. Kind of makes sense, right? They're avoiding confronting the work that needs to be done. They're avoiding confronting the battles that need to be fought and overcome. But they just have a story that somehow, once again, requires somebody else to do for them. All right. Aaron, what are you writing here? She writes, too many people like the minimum payment option no matter how much they're spending. Yeah, and you'll have just people who don't see things this way. And a lot of it has to do with, there could be a general lack of awareness. There's been plenty of times where, like I'll use my kids as an example. We'll go to get something to eat, stop at like a deli or something. And one of my sons will try and order like 3 steak sandwiches. I'm being over the top here, but order something where it's like, we're not poor, son, but maybe you shouldn't put in a $80 lunch order. Yeah, we're not like that, okay? So maybe we shouldn't order 3 just over the top. And it's like, I'm not yelling at him. I'm not mad at him. He just doesn't understand the context of what it is that we're doing to him, because he'll just as soon, if I don't finish it, I'll just throw it out. I didn't feel like eating the rest of it. These are things that kids need to learn. Well, there are adults sometimes that they also don't understand what these things are. They don't understand how much you've done for them. So to ever feel any sort of inclination to want to reciprocate. But those aren't usually the case, right? I think we can all agree that those people aren't usually the ones that are avoiding, reciprocating at some, equitable level, with the people. And it doesn't have to be money, right? It's like, hey, this guy has got a lot of money. He's buying me this thing. I know how to fix stuff. He doesn't. I'm going to help him with that. Like I've bartered like that in the jiu-jitsu school for 20-something years, where I have guys that know how to do stuff, and I'm looking for ways to reciprocate with training and anything that I could be of value. That's as old as it gets, but when people are always looking to do just enough, again, this is a telltale sign that you're dealing with somebody. It's probably not going to be the best ally, right? Jamie writes, if a person can't pay, they shouldn't play or allow themselves to be placed in situations that have no comprehension how to get themselves out of. Absolutely right. And just the way that I was mentioning before, if I have a wealthy friend that wants to go to some fancy restaurant that I know I can't afford, I'm never going to put myself there, because I understand that there's an argument that I shouldn't be there. No, I'll take care of it for you. No, I'm good. I'm good. Like, hey, if I go to a wedding and they have like world-class cuisine that I would never pay this amount of money in a restaurant to eat, hey, I'm at the wedding, but to go and experience, I guess, a lifestyle that I've never invested in earning and deserving, to me, it's just a little disingenuous, and it's really, I would say, to a certain extent, taking advantage of the person that's providing it for you, right? Or allowing yourself to be manipulated, right? So that was number 5, right? So let's go through the list again. Number 1, these are the 7 patterns of passive men. Number 1, they confuse showing up with stepping up. Number 2, they chase comfort and call it discipline. Number 3, they copy the signals of strength. Number 4, they consume more than they create. We just went over number 5. They avoid confrontation and call it unity. Let's get to number 6. They demand respect. They've never risked anything to receive. They expect loyalty. They expect access. They expect influence to some extent. But they've never sacrificed anything. They've never invested anything. They've never created anything. They've never shown themselves to be reliable in a situation where reliable people were required. But they still want to be treated with respect. A lot of people have, their take on respect. Like, you start at 0. You got to earn respect with me, or I respect everybody until they give me a reason to not respect them. Everybody's got their take, right? I have mine, right? So my definition of respect, some of you guys may have heard me put it out before. If you look at the breakdown of the word, right, and you look at the roots of the word respect, you have which is repetitive, right? To repeat, to go over and over again, right? That's what that prefix means. And then spect, which is connected to a cognitive spectating, right? So I think it's a cognate, whatever it is, it's related to it. And so you look at seeing something over and over again. Something is respectable when you are seeing it in its form over and over again. If somebody is looking to gain respect, they need only be consistent in how they present themselves. I don't conflate respecting somebody with liking somebody, with approving of somebody. And I think a lot of that stuff tends to get morphed together with just the clumsiness of language that we have these days. Where it's like, I don't respect him, because he does this thing and I don't like that. It's like, well, it's kind of not what respect means. Now, if they're using it that way, that's what it means to them, and so be it. But the way I treated it, it's hard to demand respect if you have yet to consistently present yourself as the same person. I could respect somebody for being who or what they are, but they might not approve of that assessment that I'm making. If I see a bum on the street who's asking for money, I respect him to act like a bum on the street acting for money. That means my expectations are aligned with the identity that I've established as having seen over and over again to where I could trust it. That's the value of what respect is, right? I don't approve of what he's doing or connect or resonate somehow with his struggles and the perspectives that he had. Like, there's plenty of offset. There's plenty of overlap. But the overlap is he wants to do this thing, and I want to accept him as somebody who does that thing, right? And so that being said, looking to this pattern, when I say they demand respect they've never risked anything for, You'll have people who want to be looked at as being valuable, as being helpful, as being qualified, as being brave, courageous, intelligent, all these other, positive attributes. They want that given to them, but they've never done the work to do it. They've never exposed themselves to the process to earn it. And passive men, this is a pattern that many of them, if not all of them at some point, fall into. They're the people that have never done anything, but they want to be looked at as a man. I'm a man. Okay, well, you're an adult male at a minimum. We've got that down. Let's talk a little bit more about what you've done to have, or to expect everybody to say, "Oh man, that's a real man. That's a man." Like what are we saying here? Is there a criteria that should be met, or are you portraying again the facade that you think makes you deserving of the benefits that people who usually have that identity present and get, right? So hope that makes sense. So we have the last one here. This is number 7. And this is the 7 patterns of passive men. Let's go through the list one more time. Number 1, they confuse showing up with stepping up. Number 2, they chase comfort and they call it discipline, right? Number 3, they copy the signals of strength. Number 4, they consume more than they create. Number 5, they avoid confrontation and call it unity. Number 6, they demand respect they've never risked anything for and therefore haven't earned. And finally, number 7, and this is a big one. All of them have this. They wait for certainty before acting. They wait for certainty before acting. Now, the reason I say all of them have this is embedded in the label, being a passive man. You're somebody who sort of waits to be told what to do, to be revealed what the options that you have available are. You're not somebody that enters into any arena where there is uncertainty, right? So you're not the person that conquers. You're not the person that creates. You're not the person that invests and works towards creating a return on that investment. You're somebody who just waits until all the exploring and developing has been done. And then you want to walk with everybody else, right? You let somebody else walk through the dark house and turn all the lights on before you travel the house yourself, right? They delay their decisions until everything is seemingly perfect, right? When you look at paralysis analysis or analysis paralysis, you know what I mean. You'll find this, this pattern. They convince themselves that, if I wait and just pay attention and design a little bit more, I'm being responsible, right? I'm being intelligent. I'm not rushing to it. I'm not being hasty. Being patient. Patience is key, and they'll believe, some of what they're saying, but it really just comes down to you're trying to make sure it's safe before you move, which again, that's a way to be, I guess, but it's not something that I would advocate for. When a man is looking how to make his way in the world, when a man is looking to self-overcome, it's not something that I would say at all. It's like sometimes we gotta take some chances just because it's going to reveal a side to ourselves that we've never been sort of stimulated to reveal. Pressure to power is the model, right? So if you're somebody who's looking to avoid pressure and you think that's success, it's what I say about the guy who walks around saying that he's undefeated. And then, you talk to him a little bit more and you realize he's actually never been in a fight. It's like, yeah, so if you're somebody who's never gotten into a fight, but you take pride in the fact that you're undefeated, it's not too dissimilar than somebody who's saying, they're completely healthy, they've never had an injury. And they're saying in a way to sort of imply that they're like everybody else, not going to die. I've made the joke before, like I don't want to be healthy when I die. I'm going to run this thing till the wheels come off. But what am I doing in the process? I'm doing what the actual value of life is. It's to go and become as powerful as I could be. If you guys have read the 3 Roads, then it's like the pursuit of power is what I offer a man as life's purpose. How that power is revealed and acquired, it's different from man to man, obviously. But there's internal power and external power. Internal power is a self power. External power is real power. Internal power is how he could keep the integrity of his identity despite the growing stressors around him. Think of the monk who could sit there in some meditative pose in the middle of the snow by himself on the top of a mountain somewhere and not freeze to death. Or the person who has a level of focus in chaos that nobody can understand. It's like that is an internally powerful identity. Those are a couple of examples. Real power, you don't have to have internal power to have real power. You could just be born a prince. Right? Real power is the ability that man has to make the world respond. That could be somebody who's wealthy. That could be somebody who's very physically attractive. That could be somebody who has a skill that just enamors those around him. It could be somebody who, just has a relationship with the environment that allows him to manipulate it according to, his will. Real power, external power takes, just like internal power, it takes a lot of different shapes. But the idea is to have the best of both of those worlds, because that's where the power of the individual comes from. It's contributing to and investing in the cultivation of that internal power, that self-power, so that we're able to maintain our state. And the world could be collapsing around us and we're still on mission. But we also want to sort of have some proof that there is a value to being that way, and that's where the real power comes in. And it's not just the accumulation of wealth. It doesn't have to be the accumulation of any wealth. But it is making the environment bend to your will. You take somebody who has a high skill set of survival and bushcraft, and he can go to the middle of the woods and live off the grid, by himself. Let's give him a girlfriend, right? Him and his girlfriend, right? Who can't get pregnant, right? I'm feeling guilty for this guy. I'm putting him in the woods by himself. But if he goes and can live off the grid by himself indefinitely, that is a powerful man, both internally and externally in that situation. All right, but that's the goal. So all that being said, coming back to this list of the 7 patterns of passive men, those things are not achieved by being passive. Those things are achieved by being somebody who is in pursuit of their own power. I could judge a man by the observed will that he demonstrates. When I start working with somebody one-on-one in my coaching, and I've said this before, one of the first things that I do is I see what they think they're about. Who are you? Tell me about yourself. What are you trying to accomplish? What are your goals? What's the vision? What's the mission you're on right now? Tell me about the people around you. Tell me about the things you've done. Tell me about your schedule. And after all of it, I sit there and go, yeah, this doesn't match that. That doesn't match this. Yep, this one, that can't exist in this. This is, there should be some cognitive dissonance between these two things. You can't, it's like, I never want to kill an animal. People who kill animals are evil. My favorite food is steak. It's like, well, you gotta, reconcile those things there. But that's the first thing that I do, because in order to be powerful, we need to start understanding first and foremost who we are. And we can't do that if we're holding and maintaining all of these, these contradictory positions, not only in our identity, but in our actions, right? You go to the gym and you do 4 hours of cardio, then you come home and you eat, a cake. It's like, what are you doing? You might as well better off doing neither of them, But that is the process, right? So being a passive man is something that I would never advocate for. It's somebody that's just sitting around waiting for life to tell them how to live, right? And that's not what life's about. All right, guys, right on. Let's end it there. I put down everything I wanted to. Hopefully you guys picked it up. Being a passive man is another example of something I've been talking about lately a lot, which is the lack of alignment that men have. When I talk about the 3 roads, and some of you, I spoke a little bit about it now today, but some of you are familiar. Some of you have even gotten your hands on the Three Roads Manifesto and read that, alignment is really a commentary on those three roads. And a lot of the problems that I see in men in their lives, and I say problems, they want something and they just can't find a way to achieve it, or they have this angst or this negative energy despite, having a life that's good on paper. A lot of these discrepancies, these incompatibilities, are based on a lack of alignment. Whether you're watching on YouTube or on Facebook, if you look in the description, I created an assessment that an individual could use called the Leadership Alignment Assessment. It's free. It takes about 3 minutes. And the results you get are completely customized. So it's not like you're just getting this plug and chug, do this and I send you this. I'm using some pretty impressive programming and software to allow these things to be as specific as possible to you, as customized to you. And it's completely free, right? So click that link there, take the assessment. After you do, send me a message, send me a DM here. There's a couple of ways to contact me, once you get that information. But let me know what you think. Give me some feedback. I'm always looking to improve it. And I'm always looking to hear, the things that it's helped men with, right? So I appreciate you guys, great talk as usual. And I will see you next week, same time. And as always, brothers and sisters, pressure to power.